Okay.
Get this. Mm, So basically, what I want to know is if the population of Canada is ready and want to be vaccinated, or if like the majority of the population is scared of it or want to
Right.
wait or something like that.
It's that is an important question, and it's a question that a lot of people are asking, and I've been asked many times. The data that we have is based on survey sampling, and a couple of companies have done some random telephone surveys to get people's opinions on this. It seems that about 60% of the population says they're willing to take the vaccine right now, given what they know. And maybe, 10 to 20% are really hesitant. We have to distinguish between vaccine hesitant and anti-vaxxer. They're different groups. Anti-vaxxers are really a political position, and in many ways they're an ideology. These are people who have decided that vaccines in any way, shape, or form are dangerous and not to be accepted, and they will never accept this vaccine. As opposed to those who are vaccine hesitant, who I think are actually quite rational. They've seen the pace of the vaccine rollout. They've heard some stories. They're just a little scared. I have all the time in the world for vaccine hesitant people because they just want to be talked to. So when we talk about are people willing to accept the vaccine, it's really the vaccine hesitant that we're talking about here because, frankly, we're never going to reach the anti vaxxers. And about maybe 20% of the population, 20 to 30%, seem hesitant. An additional 10% might be hardcore anti vaxxers. It varies, and as information becomes more available, this will change. So, what's going to happen, I think, is as more information about people's individual responses, especially as people have stories to tell about, hey, I got the vaccine, nothing bad happened to me, or hey, I just got a small fever and now I feel fine. The hesitancy will diminish as people understand this is just another vaccine for the most part. So the challenge right now is communicating transparently what the actual risks are to the extent that we know them.
Should a population be like have like confidence that the vaccine is okay,
Yeah.
even if it took like
Right.
not like maybe
Yes.
a year to
Good
do it?
question. That's a good question. Now let's go over why and how we got it so fast. Now, the previous to this one, the world record for a vaccine, I think, was a mumps vaccine. I think back in the 1960s, which was 4 years. I could be wrong about that, but 4 years is definitely the record. Now it's 10 months. How did that happen? It happened for a number of reasons. Number one is scientists were already working on vaccines for things like Ebola and cancer. And when this emergency came, they just changed target. They pivoted. So the teams were already in place, the labs were already funded, the initial work was already done. They just changed the focus. Right? So that saved a lot of time. Number two, we had already started developing vaccines for SARS 16, 17 years ago, and on MERS a few years ago. So these are other coronaviruses closely resembling the COVID virus. So a lot of the initial work was already done. Number three is that there is a new technology, a few new technologies, these viral vector technologies and the mRNA technologies that really speed things up, especially the mRNA technology. In fact, the mRNA technology was able to make a new vaccine in 48 hours. 48 hours once the genome was sequenced. That's another conversation entirely. That's a big part of this. And this past 10 months has been on testing that new vaccine. Number four is money. That's the big one. It's amazing how much you can get done with enough money. So the barrier to produce any biologic, any drug, any vaccine is always getting someone to pay for the clinical trial. So what's happened this time is that governments underwrote the risk. They provided guarantees of payment even if they failed. As a result, we could um, we could have hundreds, literally hundreds of candidates being trialed in parallel simultaneously until we got to like a dozen that were ready for phase 2, and they were all funded straight out, until we got to like 6 who were ready for phase 3. They were all 100% funded and no waiting. Yeah? And so that cut out a lot of time. Number 5 is a lot of the intermediate administrative steps were cut out. So there's no waiting around for meetings. There's no photocopying of papers and stapling them together and handing out to people and having, well, I'm free on Tuesday. No, you meet now. You get this done now. And the phase 3 started before phase 2 was done. Phase 2 started before phase 1 was done. So there's no delays. Manufacturing started before the trials were completed. So there would be no gap. Sixth reason is that data was being assessed in real time. So traditionally, after phase 3 clinical trials are done, you collect your data, you have your meetings, you look at it, this looks good, whatever. This was, as every new point was being published, the government was watching, and they were ready to make a decision the moment the last data point was recorded. That's why the USA was able to have this thing called the emergency use authorization the instant this phase 3 trial was published, right? Same with Canada. But the other big reason is that we're able to enroll a lot of people for the phase 3 clinical trial. Typically, a phase 3 clinical trial enrolls hundreds, maybe thousands of people. We enrolled tens of thousands for each vaccine, 40, 50,000 people for each candidate. What that means is the end point of the clinical trial is the point at which we get a certain number of infections. In the case of the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, that was like 200. So as soon as you got 200 infections, we can stop the trial. If we had only enrolled 1,000 people, we'd have to wait years to get that number. But because we enrolled tens of thousands, we had to wait weeks. And there are sufficiently high prevalence areas in the world, like Brazil and India and Mexico, and UK and parts of the USA, where you're going to get these infections pretty fast. Right? So the advantage of having a raging disease is you get that threshold of 200 cases pretty fast. And frankly, I'm surprised. I thought it would take a bit longer, but we got that data pretty fast. Those are the reasons. No corners were cut. No safety oversights were overlooked. All the traditional stuff we did for other vaccines were still done. It's just that the data came so much faster. That's it.
Okay. Yeah, because I heard a lot of people say that like there was a vaccine because we need it right now, and like there's a lot of money involved in it, so like it was just like political
Sure.
and economic. So that's why. So they're not like 100% sure of it because it's they think it's really like too fast.
It's a funny thing because would they have been happy if they got it 4 years from now? Or how do you make these people happy?
Nope,
Right?
probably not me. So the vaccine is safe because
it's as safe as we can make it. It's as safe as any other vaccine would be. I'm not saying it's 100% safe. Nothing is 100% safe. But if you compare it to the measles vaccine or the mumps vaccine or any other vaccine, it went through the same level of care. Now, there is this phase 4 that we're going through right now. Phase 4 is post-market. So once it enters the wide world, instead of 10,000 tests, we're doing hundreds of millions of people. So let's say you get a rare adverse event, like a tenth of 1% of people are going to have a bad reaction. A tenth of 1% of 10,000 people is, I can't do the math in my head right now, but it's like one person. But if it's 100 million people, now you're into the hundreds of people. So the law of large numbers says you're going to see reports of people having adverse events, maybe even some people dying, maybe. But it's going to be rare on a relative sense. And that's going to be a difficult thing for some people to understand who aren't used to math because they never paid attention before, but now everybody's paying attention.
We heard that there's a new mutation of the COVID-19. Is it possible that the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine or the Moderna vaccine, don't work for the new COVID-19 that we had like 2 cases or something like that
Right.
in Ontario?
That's an important question. And the answer so far is all signs point to the vaccine still working. And here's why. Every single one of the vaccines that are being trialed right now, whether it's Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, the Russian one, the Chinese one, they're all work kind of the same way. And that is they are trying to identify this protein on the surface of the virus. It's called the spike protein. The analogy I always make is that the spike protein is like the license plate of a car. So the vaccine teaches your body to identify that license plate so it knows, hey, it's that guy, it's that car, call the cops and let's arrest that guy before he gets into our cell, right? So the new mutation, it's actually a variant, right? The new variant, the license plate appears to be 1% different. This is what the Moderna people are saying. Their analyses show it's exactly 1% different. What does that mean for a license plate? It means that the corner of one of the digits on the license plate is a little smudged, but you can still read it. So when this smudgy license plate shows up, you can still say, hey, it's that guy in the car, call the cops, stop him from coming in. So there's every reason to expect the vaccines to work. Of course, they are investigating it right now, and they'll confirm this. But so far, I am not concerned about this. The other part to that story, though, is, as I mentioned, the mRNA vaccines created by Moderna and Pfizer can be created in 48 hours once you have the RNA sequence of the virus. So let's say we get a variant that really is very different. The license plate is a whole new digit. What do you do then? Well, you sequence that genome, and in 48 hours, new vaccine. Then it's a matter of just manufacturing more and shipping it out.
Mm.
So we will always be able to respond just a couple of weeks later after every new variant is reproduced. So this is not a reason to worry, in my opinion.
Perfect. There's something that happened in Quebec that in hospital, I think 80% had the vaccine in them, and 10 days later got a COVID-19. The 80% in the hospital. So do the all the person has to have like the 2 doses back to back, or that's kind of a problem is if all the population has one and we can get it after.
So there's some things to unpack there. First of all, just because you got the vaccine, it doesn't mean you're immune. It takes a few days for the immune response to build up. So if I get the shot today and tomorrow I French kiss my girlfriend who is COVID positive and she gives it to me, I will still be infected because not enough time has gone by for me to have enough what we call neutralizing antibodies. That's the first thing. Second of all, if I've already been exposed before getting the shot, then I'm already infected. So unless these people have a negative COVID test before getting a shot, we can't be assured that they're already positive. So I think those two things are what is driving those infections that are being reported. Most likely the first one, that people are being exposed before they had enough time. So this is part of the danger of vaccination. A lot of people get a shot, then start going to the bars and nightclubs and stuff. Hey, I'm immune. No, you're not immune. You got to wear your mask and keep your distance for some time. The second thing is about the second dose. The data so far that we have says that after the first dose, you have about a 90% protection, which is fantastic. It's not perfect though. So again, 10% of people won't be protected. And that kicks in at about 2 weeks. So 2 weeks after your first dose, the efficacy, we call it, is about 90%. Now, at 21 days or 28 days, depending upon if you're Pfizer or Moderna, you get your second shot. If you don't get your second shot, we don't know how immune you are because no one's ever looked at it. So right now, there's a lot of discussion about, can we wait more than 28 days? Can we wait 3 months, as the British are planning to do? Well, maybe you can, maybe you can't. We just don't know. My argument is we should stick to what we know. So the clinical trials presented data that the government used to license these vaccines. And if we deviate from what that data expresses, we can't be sure that the vaccines will work the way that they've been described to work. So I think it's irresponsible to deviate from the protocol. Having said that, I suspect that in a year when we have more data, we'll probably learn that you probably can get away with one dose, to be honest. Um, but I don't think we should try that right now. But the takeaway message from that answer is these people who are testing positive after their shot, it's because they were exposed before they got enough antibodies or they were exposed before they got their shot. The vaccine cannot give you the disease. It is impossible because the vaccine does not contain the disease. The AstraZeneca and the Janssen ones only contain the protein, the spike protein, and the Moderna and Pfizer one don't even contain that. They contain, the genetic content of the protein.
Perfect. So my last question is, when do you think the world will get to normal? Because a lot of person who said to me that they will take the vaccine is because they want the world to be normal again and don't wear a mask or anything like that.
Right. So that's a big question. And part of the answer to that question is what is normal? So if normal is the way things were in 2019, okay, that's an answer. I can give you that answer. But also there's a lot of unknowns here. Let's go through the unknowns. First unknown is we don't know if the vaccines stop transmission or they just stop serious disease. That means if I get the shot, I might still be able to give it to you if I get infected, but I won't get sick. Now, that's not that big a deal if we make sure everybody gets the shot. But until everybody gets the shot, that means I still have to wear my mask and keep distance and all that stuff. So that means it's going to take longer to get to normal. By the way, I think it does stop transmission. That's my opinion. I can't prove it, but I have a very strong suspicion that it does. We will know in about 6 months based upon some epidemiological data. So that's the first unknown. Second is how quickly can we get the vaccine out? There are a variety of formulations out there. As you know, the Pfizer one has to be stored very, very cold, and so we can't send it to some places. Pfizer and Moderna require 2 doses. The Janssen one, which isn't licensed yet, is only 1 dose. That might be a big game changer. AstraZeneca, somewhere between 60 and 80% effective, depending upon how you do the dosage. So, but that can be stored in the fridge, so that can be spread out more. The answer, though, is we in Canada can probably get back to something resembling normal by the fall. What does resembling normal mean? It means you won't be afraid. We'll probably have limits on gatherings until 2022. We'll probably have, lineups in front of grocery stores until 2022 because not everyone will be protected. The masks, I think, will be gone by Christmas of this year, assuming we get enough vaccine penetration. Right? And assuming no new things throw our way, like a whole new mutation comes our way and everything's got to change. Now, for the world, though, that's a huge thing. The world might not get enough vaccine until 2024. There's quite some concern about this. So that means it's incumbent upon rich countries to make sure that poorer countries get access to the vaccine, because right now we're fighting each other to get the world's most valuable commodity right now, the vaccine. And it doesn't do us any good if it's still simmering somewhere in the world. So international travel won't look normal for many, many years. We might need, proof of vaccination to travel. We might still have to get tests when we arrive somewhere. All of this can change. All of this can be expedited quickly if we have a really full-on press to create more vaccine, and if we also combine that with strategic testing. So if you have, imperfect vaccine penetration, but you've also got people being rapidly tested at borders and getting into hospitals, then you've got 2 layers of protection that can get us a very comfortable kind of normal again, to the point where we don't even think about this disease much anymore. I think we'll get there. I have faith. Faith is not the wrong word. My prediction is that the pandemic will be declared over in early 2022, but that won't mean that it won't still exist. It'll still be simmering somewhere in the world. And that brings up the option of maybe at that point we can have a conversation about eradicating it, wiping it from the face of the earth, which, something to consider.
Perfect. Then thank you a lot. Like, you answered my question very well. That's very interesting. Like the last question, it's like really good to know. There were a lot of questions that I was like asking myself if I would take the vaccine or not, because I'm a little bit hesitant. But I think with what
It's
you
reasonable.
said,
It's reasonable. I mean, it's okay to be hesitant. I mean, it shows rational thinking. It just means you have to ask questions. And like I said, nothing is without risk. Some people are going to have some bad reactions. I mean, I had the shingles vaccine 2 years ago, and it was brutal. I was in bed for 2 days. I could not function. The worst I've felt in my life. And I knew the science. I knew this is just a vaccine
yeah.
reaction. I'll be fine in 2 days. But it was hard, and I had to get a booster shot some months later, and I was really scared of the booster shot because I don't want to go through that again. So for someone who doesn't know the science, that's got to be scary. That brings up some equity issues. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have to go get your shot and you can't take care of your kids for 2 days because you're in bed, well, you need some support for that. You need to
Mm-hmm.
take a day off from work. Your employer has to support you for that. You have to take a day off of work to go to the vaccination clinic to get your shots. Who's going to take care of you? I mean, there's so much going on here
Yeah.
that I hope people are thinking it through.
Oh, last question. Do you think the vaccine should be an obligation?
That's always the question people ask. That's not a scientific question. That's a political question. But I'll tell you
Yeah.
what I think. Um, I think, given what we've seen this past year with people fighting back against masks and denying the disease exists, I don't think an obligatory vaccine will be well accepted by a lot of people. And I don't think it's a wise thing to do for political and social dynamic reasons. Of course, if we made it mandatory, that would solve all our problems. Just take the bloody vaccine. If you get
Mhm.
sick, we'll put you in the hospital, it'll be fine. No, you can't do that because this isn't just a battle against a virus. It's a how did my hair here? It's a battle against people's feelings, and we have to live with each other well after the pandemic is over. We don't want people remembering this endeavor as an oppressive authoritarian adventure. We want them remembering this as a triumph of science and of rational thought. So I would rather we expend effort and money and resources explaining to people why they should get it rather than forcing them to get it. That will pay much better dividends down the road. Now, there are going to be a percentage of people who still refuse. Okay, for those people, we don't make it obligatory, but we create incentives. For example, maybe you can't have certain jobs if you can't get
Mm-hmm.
vaccinated. Maybe you can't get on a plane. Um, that's not unreasonable. It just means some things are denied you. No one's making you take it, but some things in society will be denied you. It's kind of like no one's making you get a driver's license, but if you don't get one, well, I'm sorry, you probably can't live in the suburbs and work downtown. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that's society is like that. They're give and take, but
Yeah.
it's a really important question, and it becomes more important when we talk about schools. We haven't talked about children at all because none of the vaccines yet have been proven to work on children. And that we will know that in a few months, and
Okay.
probably we'll start vaccinating children sometime next year. And probably, I wouldn't be surprised if we make it mandatory for children.
Okay.
I would not be surprised because we already have a track record of that, of making, the measles vaccine mandatory to
Mm-hmm.
attend schools. So if you link it to the opportunity to go to school, you get that job done. And if you don't want it, then you got to be homeschooled. Um, but hopefully we won't get to that point.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Like that would be like that would be smart. Like to do it like that. Like in my opinion, I think that would be the good thing to do. So